Our top story, it's a full-blown diplomatic war that is seeing a major escalation today. India has suspended visas for Canadian nationals across the world. Those with existing visas can travel to India, but there will be no fresh visas issued. The MEA says India's High Commission and consulates in Canada are facing threats, something that has disrupted their normal functioning. Listen in.
You are aware of the security threats being faced by our High Commission and consulates in Canada. This has disrupted their normal functioning. Accordingly, our High Commission and consulates are temporarily unable to process visa applications. We will be reviewing the situation on a regular basis.
Meanwhile, another Khalistani terrorist, Sukhdool Singh, has been killed in an inter-gang rivalry in Canada. He was killed at his home in Winnipeg. Gangsters Lawrence Bishnoi and Goldie Brar have claimed responsibility. Taking to Facebook, Bishnoi posted that he has killed Sukhdool and has also warned other Khalistani gangsters that their time will come soon. This is coming just a day after the NIA released a list of 43 most wanted criminals, some of them based in Canada. These individuals, alleged to be involved in a wide array of criminal activities, are suspected of having links to terrorist organizations. This list, by the way, also includes Sukhdool's name, apart from Bishnoi's name and Brar's name. India has accused Canada of sheltering at least 20 most wanted Khalistani terrorists. It has said that Canada has turned a deaf ear to India's extradition requests. In fact, India is saying separately, India is also saying that Canada has become a safe haven for Khalistani terrorists. Separately, the NIA's crackdown on Khalistani thugs continue. Over 44 locations were raided in Punjab today, including gangster Sukhdool's residence in Moga, Punjab.
मुझे पूछा गया था, I think somebody asked how many such cases were there. My understanding is over 20 individuals. I don't have exact number, that's for security agencies. We have sought either extradition requests or other kind of assistance related to that. So at least more than 20, maybe 25 individuals we have requested over, and not just recently. So many years we've been requesting, and the response has not been helpful at all.
On Tuesday, Trudeau had triggered a crisis not seen in Indo-Canadian ties for years. He alleged, and I quote, agents of the Indian government were involved in the killing of the separatist leader Hardeep Singh Nijjar on Canadian soil in June. And after Trudeau's fakery, a top Indian diplomat was also expelled by Canada, which obviously led to a huge diplomatic escalation. Calling the charges absurd and motivated, India in return asked a Canadian diplomat to leave. Then came the advisory. The government issued an advisory for Indian nationals and students in Canada, urging them to exercise utmost caution in view of growing anti-India activities and politically condoned hate crimes and violence in Canada. India has once again given it back to Canada. It has called Canada's allegations politically driven and prejudiced. It has also confirmed that Canada shared no information regarding the allegations. Listen in.
Yes, we have informed the Canadian government that there should be parity in strength and rank equivalence in our diplomatic presence, in mutual diplomatic presence. Their numbers here are very much higher than ours in Canada. The details of this are being worked out, but I assume there will be a reduction. Yes, I do think there is a degree of prejudice here, They have made the allegations, they have taken action on them. To us, it seems or it appears that these allegations by the government of Canada are primarily politically driven. No, let me clarify. No specific information has been shared by Canada on this case, either then or before or after. We have, As we have said, or I think we've been made very clear, we are willing to look at any specific information. We have conveyed this to the Canadian side, made it clear to them that we are willing to look at any specific information that is provided to us. But so far, we have not received any such specific information. That from our side, very specific evidence about criminal activities by individuals based on Canadian soil has been shared with the Canadian authorities on a regular basis, but not been acted upon.
Let me go across to our guests who are joining us this evening. Veena Sikri is a former ambassador. She's joining us on the broadcast. Tehseen Ponawalla is a political analyst joining us as well on the broadcast. Veena Sikri, I first want to understand from you how far this escalation will go. Today we have come to a point in India-Canadian relations where India has suspended visas for Canadian nationals who wish to travel to India. How far do you think this escalation will go?
Well, I think India is fully justified and fully correct in its response to this provocation that the Prime Minister of Canada has imposed on India by saying in Parliament that he blames India and that he says he has credible allegations of a potential link. Now, where is the proof? Our spokesman today has categorically said that as of date, no proof has been provided, and India doesn't know why this allegation has been made. At the same time, we know that Indian government has over the years and months given very specific proof of evidence of activities by Khalistani supporters in Canada against India's interests, calling for secession, attacking Indian High Commission and consulates, and even Interpol red corner notices have been provided. But Canadian government has taken absolutely no action against these Khalistani, pro-Khalistani groups based in Canada. Now, today, this factor of, making an allegation in the Canadian Parliament and expelling a senior Indian diplomat had to be responded to. There's no way that India could have kept quiet on that. So, of course, we have expelled a very senior Canadian diplomat from here. And then we find that the Canadian government issues an advisory for their citizens to travel to India. And we issued an advisory. Now, our advisory is very interesting language. We said for politically condoned hate crimes against Indian citizens and interests. Now, this is amazing because we know that these pro-Khalistan groups have been attacking Hindu temples. They have been putting graffiti on Hindu temples. There's been a call for expelling, telling all Hindus leave Canada. And we know that even members of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's group of his party, the Liberal Party, have commented on this. Why is this happening? Why is such calls being made? We know that the leader of the political opposition in Canada, the head of the Conservative Party, has said that he can say nothing on make no comment on Justin Trudeau's statement in Parliament because he has no proof, he has no evidence. So why Justin Trudeau is making such serious allegations in Parliament without any an iota of proof or evidence? I mean, this is really surprising. And today we know that our spokesman has said this seems to be politically motivated. Maybe it's because of his falling popularity in Canada. Maybe it's because of another country putting pressure on him. We don't know that Prime Minister Trudeau in his own country faces a lot of pressure from the people for the kind of support he's giving to the Chinese representation there. There have been evidences of Chinese interference in Canadian election process. There have been evidences of they're supporting certain candidates for their election, of putting up listening posts along the border with USA. All this is from the Canadian press. But yet there was an attack even on a Canadian official. But Prime Minister Trudeau is very reluctant to take any action. With great difficulty, he expelled one Chinese diplomat.
Ishka bombings.
All these things show that there seems to be...
the Canadians and Mr. Trudeau in particular should look a little back into history. History will tell him why Khalistani terrorists should not be protected and given safe haven. Is he forgetting the Kanishka bombing? And is he forgetting the number of Canadians who were killed in this terrorist bombing, and the terrorist in this case was a Khalistani? I mean, sometimes it will benefit the Canadians and Mr. Trudeau to read history. But let's just pause this conversation here for a minute before I come to Tehseen. I want to tell our viewers who exactly Canada is protecting. It's amply clear if you take a look at Hardeep Singh Nijjar, whose killing is at the center of this current storm. Reports say he went to Canada on a fake passport in 1997, carrying the name Ravi Sharma. Canada rejected his asylum demand. Canada's prominent national newspaper, the National Post, reported that Nijjar then married a Canadian woman and sought citizenship once again. That plea too was rejected, which means his plea for Canadian citizenship was rejected not once, but twice. Then, the Times of India reports that Nijjar got citizenship only 4 years later in 1991 when he joined the Babbar Khalsa International, using his links with the Khalistani Tiger Force leader Jakhtar Singh Tara. The Times of India says that Nijjar's last footprints were traced to the infamous Brampton parade on 4th of June that depicted a tableau of Indira Gandhi's assassination. Nijjar, of course, was shot dead on June 18th. You know what the Canadians have said, post which there has been an escalation. Ties between India and Canada have plummeted. Let's listen in.
If there is any country, if you're talking about reputational issues and reputational damage, if there's any country that needs to look at this, I think it is Canada and its growing reputation as a place, as a safe haven for terrorists, for extremists, and for organized crime. And I think that's a country that needs to worry about it.
Veena ji has spoken about this, but I want to reinforce as to why Mr. Trudeau is accusing India of orchestrating extrajudicial killings on Canadian soil. Why is he backing the Khalistanis in the first place? It is because there's trouble in Trudeau's paradise. According to a recent survey in Canada, Mr. Trudeau's popularity is plummeting. If this survey is to be believed, 3 out of 10 Canadians consider Justin Trudeau the worst Prime Minister in the last 55 years, while his father ranks as the most popular. The apple has fallen very, very far off from the tree. The blue-eyed boy, Trudeau, is failing miserably in domestic polls. Half of the Canadians want him gone. They want a new government. Why? Because housing prices are soaring. He faces the prospects of an inquiry into how his government handled alleged Chinese government interference in the last elections. The popularity of the conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, is also on the rise, as he is comparatively considered to be a better leader who speaks on real issues. Basically, Trudeau is in deep political trouble, and for his government to survive the next electoral test, he needs Khalistani votes and he needs their support. It's not just his ally, Jagmeet Singh's NDP, that could make significant cuts into his immigrant voters' base. The immigrant Sikh vote in Canada is significant, and no party, liberal or conservative, wants to function without its support. They can't. So it seems like the vile allegations against India was the last resort for Mr. Trudeau, a step to project power and diplomatic might, which is nothing but a mere diversionary tactic. And if you go by Indian political terms, it's appeasement politics, ya vote bank ki rajniti. Would you want to come in here, Tehseen Ponawalla? Is this vote bank ki rajniti for Trudeau? Because that is what it is looking like. Otherwise, why would you call an emergency session and declare to the world that a probe is underway, but we think that India is behind the killing of Nijjar, or Indian agents are behind the killing of Nijjar? Who does that? Which responsible world leader would do that? There is something being probed and you call an emergency session and you simply declare it to the world.
So, Shreya, let me just, it started actually raining here, but let me just say, I found Mr. Trudeau, the current Prime Minister's conduct to be quite stunning. First, in Parliament, look at the choice of words he says. He says we have credible allegations, not evidence. He has no evidence to link India to the murder of Nijjar. Absolutely none. He uses the word allegations. And what he does is, because we have an ambassador on the show, he crosses the Lakshman Rekha of diplomacy. He names an Indian ambassador, an Indian diplomat, a senior Indian diplomat, who heads the intelligence wing in a friendly country's consulate in the friendly country, and he puts his life in jeopardy. Nobody does that. You don't name the diplomat. At max, you could have called up the Indian government or the Indian High Commissioner and said, look, we want this person out. You don't name him publicly. That was not acceptable. Number two, you said the apple has fallen very far from the tree. I beg to differ, Shreya. It's not fallen very far from the tree. Mr. Trudeau's father, Mr. Pierre Trudeau, was the Prime Minister when India gave enough evidence of the Khalistani movement in Canada. They did not take it seriously, which led to the Kanishka bombing. It was Mr. Trudeau's father, Pierre Trudeau. Now let's come down to something that I think your viewers would be interested to know. In 2018-19, the Canadian terrorism report came out, which highlights threats to Canada from terrorism. In that report, they named these various Khalistani groups, which Indian government had spoken about. When Mr. Trudeau had his disastrous tour to India, the 10-day tour, Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Trudeau had made some progress, and a joint declaration did speak about talking about Khalistani extremism, and subsequent to that, this report of threats to Canadian soil of terrorism spoke about these particular groups. That was subsequently dropped under pressure from Jagmeet, who continues to be an ally of Mr. Trudeau. And Mr. Trudeau is very scared that the community that votes for him, the immigrant community, may go with Mr. Jagmeet. Mr. Jagmeet is a known sympathizer of the Khalistani movement. And this is the problem. I think what the Indian government is doing is right. The Indian government has taken no wrong steps in this while I continue to not be a supporter of the government, simply because you cannot expose our diplomats in this way. You cannot put their names out. You could have just very calmly put this with the ambassador and asked the diplomat to leave. The way this was carried out, and again, focus on the words, credible allegations, not credible evidence. On basis of allegations, he's gone about attacking a partner country, a democratic nation, a nation which is a friendly nation. I think it's very worrying.
Veena Sikri, I want you to come in here, and I want you to take forward the point that the Ministry of External Affairs has made today. The Ministry of External Affairs is saying two things. First, Canada makes these wild allegations on the floor of its Parliament, Prime Minister Trudeau, without giving any intelligence or heads up to India. That you have no intelligence, you have no proof, but you make these wild allegations. A. Secondly, India is saying, and the Ministry of External Affairs is saying, that over the years, over and over and over again, we have given them intelligence on anti-India activities that are happening from Canadian soil. We have given them inputs about Khalistani terrorists who continue to have a free run in Canada. And yet Canada has done nothing except protect and shelter 20 to 25 Khalistani terrorists. The MEA is giving us a number as well today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the decades-long support by governments in Canada for the Khalistani groups has to stop, has to be ended, and their bluff has to be called. You know, in Canada, you have their own separatist groups, the Quebecois, the Quebec separatists. You have the trucker strike. When these trucker strikes or the Quebec separatist groups are in action, then there is no talk of freedom of expression. There is no talk of freedom of conscience. Action is taken and they are forced to call off all things. But for the Khalistanis, they are allowing them to make secessionists talk against another country. I think the government is absolutely right in what they're doing. And I think it's going to get worse, because one of the things that our spokesperson said today, Arindam Bakshi said today, that the number of Canadian diplomats in Delhi is far larger than the number of Indian diplomats in Canada. And this unequal status cannot be allowed to continue. So I think you're going to see a lot of Canadian diplomats leaving Delhi. It's not really the end of the matter. But I think that the world's attention is now being drawn to making to these kind of false allegations that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has made without providing a scrap of evidence and making them just to show India in a poor light. And it is significant that because of India's outreach to other countries such as UK, USA, Australia, or New Zealand, all of them are members of the Five Eyes grouping that they have on intelligence sharing. They have been very careful. They have not said anything. They say, yes, it's a serious allegation. Of course, if you accuse somebody of murder, it's a serious allegation. But you cannot make such an allegation without providing any proof. You cannot make it just to deliberately, attack India for your own political purposes and think that it will bring you dividends in the Canadian political arena. And I think that his bluff has been called. His own people are writing against him. His political opponents are reaping the dividends of this tremendous gaffe that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has made. And I think that India has been absolutely correct and in its response, and they should continue this in the foreseeable future.
Also, you point out to something very important. You point out to the fact that the diplomatic row between India and Canada is set to get worse because India officially today in a press conference is saying that the number of diplomats in Canada and India from both sides needs to be the same. Essentially, that's what he said. Essentially hinting to the fact that there will be more Canadian diplomats who will be asked to leave. So the war is set to escalate. Let's see where this ends. If at all it ends, will it end till Mr. Trudeau is at the helm of affairs in Canada? We'll just have to wait and watch. Thank you, Veena Sikri, for joining us. Tehseen Ponawalla, good to have you on the show, despite it being raining there at Vijay Chowk. So thank you very much for joining us as well. I'm slipping into a quick break on the show. There's more coming up on the other side as we speak. In fact, the Women's Reservation Bill is being debated in the Rajya Sabha. The Prime Minister will be present in the Rajya Sabha during the closing remarks. We'll cut across to that as and when it happens. For the moment, a very quick break.